Will you find me stunned today? Just stunned. There's no other word for it. Stunned. I don't know. I don't know where I am. I thought today I'd do a video. If you listen to some of my podcasts I do from time to time when reminiscing about the past and films that we used to watch, I would mention about how I was little. We would walk a couple of miles to our local cinema, and we would walk across fields from where we lived, across two whacking great big fields, and then up country lanes to our nearest town, which was Westmoreland. Okay. The last time I was here was getting on for 2 years ago with my friend Giles, who I'm meeting later, and we walked through those two fields, and the one nearest to my house, which is over that way, about, I don't know, almost a mile that way, the big field first, had been earmarked for housing developments, and they were starting to clear trees. And so my plan today was be in this field, and not go near that, because I don't want a reminder that my childhood is being cemented over and being gone forever. And here I am in the next field, and the building on this bloody one, and oh look, there's a farm over there, right? And that's off towards the school that I used to go to. So I know where I am. That's the farm. This is field 2. Field 1 is over there. But look what the bloody hell they've done with it. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So not starting the most serene of ways, but let's continue. So I grew up over there. I was actually born about 2 miles over there. Moved when I was about 4 over there, and then right up until I left as an adult, that's where I lived. And our local cinema was at Westmoreland, as I say, about a couple of miles away. And when we were little, and I do mean little, 8, 9 years old, we were allowed to just walk across the fields and go off to the pictures. And I wanted to retrace my steps today, but I can't, because you got whacking great big building sites and sales centre over there. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Anyway, so yeah, the walk would have started over there. We'd have left the house, gone up the hill, down the hill, crossed the road, over the step stile, cross field number 1, over the next step stile, and across this field, past those trees, and gone off there, right? Now, I don't know how good this microphone is. You might be able to hear a noise. Traffic. That was never there in the 70s, because there's a big dual carriageway all the way along there, right? Before I move on, and while there's no ramblers or dog walkers, Westmoreland, which is where I'm going, is over there. And in the Second World War, it was important because there was an airfield just outside town, and it was for a squadron of Hurricane fighters. And and that's important because this skyline over that way, you've got London, you've also got Chatham Dockyard, so the German bombers would fly on over, and the Hurricanes would scramble, take off just over there to intercept them. And when the Battle of Britain in 1940 was being played out in these skies, my mum would tell me about it. She said she'd be walking along the lanes all around here, and the air raid sirens would go off, and she said but there was nowhere to hide, so she would just kept on walking. She was like 10 then, and she said it was quite pretty. You'd look in the sky, lovely blue sky, and you'd see all these white lines forming in the sky. There was an airfield there. Stopped being an airfield, but you had businesses up there. And in the 80s, the air shows came back, and they would put on air shows, and we never really had to go. I did go a couple of times because my brother-in-law worked up there spraying aircraft, but you didn't have to, because this was the flight path for the planes. They would fly along, turn around over near where we lived, and go back. We got a free air show. The other thing of note about that airfield was the Beatles did their Magical Mystery Tour filming, or a lot of the filming, up there, because all the London studios were booked. The film studios were booked, so they came down here, And yeah, they did some of the filming of their Magical Mystery Tour there. I Am the Walrus was completely filmed up there, all right. No, and that dual carriageway, I'm going to start moving now. That dual carriageway is there because in the early 90s, the whole airfield was cleared for development, and just like what's happening here, everything was bulldozed, everything was tarmacked over, and you've just got a whacking great big, it's not a village, it's not a town, it's just tons of houses, and it's just changed the neighbourhood. The shops that we're going to be going past, you know, all these small family businesses are all gone now, so you've got quite poncy shops, you've all coffee bars, you know, fancy restaurants, etc, etc. The character of Westmoreland changed radically from my childhood. But yeah, we're going to get past this horrible sales centre and get down to the end of the field and into the lane. Okay, that's more like it. Now I'm the other side of that dual carriageway. Everything's all right with the world because this now pretty much is completely unchanged from my childhood. The little 8-year-old me would have walked along this lane which looked exactly like this. The little primary school there is unchanged. That's how it always was. Everything now looks basically exactly the same. All the development and everything was all round. Far more cars now than there ever used to be. But yeah, up there, Kings Hill development, it changed everything. It changed everything because the Londoners moved out. It became a commuter town. Westmoreland became a commuter town, which it wasn't. I mean, when I was born, and my generation before me, all the way around here, you know, Westmoreland, Raymar, where I was born, it was all farming folk. It was all farming communities, and all the houses were for the farmers and the farm workers and the labourers. The commuters moved in, drove up all the house prices. If ever there came a law to say everyone, you've got to go back and live in the place you grew up in, I couldn't afford it. You know, up at Kings Hill, you have very, very bog standard, you know, rather, you know, shoddily made houses going for over $1 million, easy. So, so yeah, the character, well, not the character, Westmoreland still has the character it used to be. It's just different, all right? But this isn't, and this walk isn't. This is the walk I would have been taking to go to the pictures. Not much further up there. I don't know if you can see. There's like a wooden door in a wall. All right. I'm going to get past that, and I'll come back. That's the railway track, by the way. Right. There's the wooden door in the wall, which to the little me meant that I was nearly there. Yeah. In the early 80s. I was still living at home, and even though I was a projectionist by then, I would still walk on over occasionally. I can remember seeing Excalibur at the cinema here because for some reason the cinema I was at didn't show it on first run. I think we had it on second run with a double bill with something. Actually, this one had it first, and I can remember walking over one evening to see it and then walking back when it was dark, and it just been very moody, you know, walking in the dark after you've seen John Borman's Excalibur, and walking back, and the wind was blowing in the trees, and it was all very atmospheric. So anyway, that's the door, which meant we're nearly there. I don't know if you can see above there are some large buildings, and they're connected to that door, but there's another feature just round the corner which is even more distinctive to than that, which I'll show you in a second. So we're around the corner now, and you've got some fantastic buildings here, which would have been worth quite a bit of money in the day. God knows how much they're worth now. But yeah, you come around the corner and you have a waterfall, which is another indicator that we're almost there, right? we have a waterfall, and that waterfall is in the grounds of this, wait for the car, this is a nunnery. We have a nunnery in Westmoreland. Anyway, just about to head up that road. This is Swan Street, we're in Westmoreland now, and I have a little reminisce from my past when we're halfway up. I just point out the old brewery that used to be here, converted into luxury flats. I'm going to get self-conscious now because there's people everywhere. So, can you see over there, right about where my fingertip is, there's a building with like a purpley awning. That's a hairdresser's these days, but in my youth, that was a sweet shop, and I had a friend called Stephen who lived there. His parents ran it, and I can remember going there one Saturday afternoon and going around to play, and then in the early evening, Doctor Who and the Daleks was on, one of the Peter Cushing film versions. And I can remember us watching that upstairs in that house, and him asking his parents if we could go down and help ourselves to sweets. So that's one memory, but the other memory is walking back the way I've just come. And again, I don't know how old I was, about 10, something like that, and just being scared of all the spooky trees. So that's Swan Street there. I've just come up, and then you've got to go that way. As I say, this was a very much a rural community. All the shops were, you know, grocers, greengrocers, bakers, butchers. Pretty much that's all it was. On the corner there, that building there, that was Baldock's up until only a few years ago, which sold clothing, mainly work clothing. And when the Beatles were here, Ringo Starr went in there and he bought some trousers and a shirt. And yeah, then this is the high street. My granddad used to come up here every Saturday morning, about this time actually, and he would come up on the bus, even though he only lived about a mile away, and would get his tobacco, have a half a pint, and go back home again every Saturday morning. We're just about to go around that corner where it says Village Hall. So I've just come around that corner, it's there. And yeah, as you can see, that is incredibly narrow. That was always dodgy. Even back in the 70s, you could get one car through that bit at a time. Now, the way the world is now, with so many more cars on the road, God knows how they get through here when this gets busy. This building with the columns just here, it's like a cafe now. I wanted to do a bit of filming just there, but there's people sat outside right by the window I wanted to talk about. The window I wanted to talk about was when I was coming up here to the pictures each time. It was a bike shop that sold toys, and especially corgi cars were always in the window. And always would you look at the UFO Shadowmobile and you know the Interceptor and long for them. Anyway, we're nearly there. It's that away. No, forgot I've gone back into the high street. I'm on that corner again. That thing there. Yeah, this grill house back in '67, that was a newsagent's, and they filmed a little bit of Magical Mystery in there. I think Ringo sold John some tickets. Yeah, so the Beatles were in that very shop. Are we rolling?
Rolling.
Right, as you can tell, I've got a cameraman now. Cameraman, would you like to just point up that way? That's the way we just come from. Well, I just come from, isn't it? Right, so, if you'd like to pan back. So, this is where the Raymar was. When you were up there and came around that corner, you'd see the big red neon sign saying Raymar, which stuck out like that. And this is basically the edge of the property. Right? And it went on pretty much to just beyond that white car. Okay? And are you aware of this, Giles? That it was a badminton hall?
No.
It was built in the 1921, a one-level structure, all wood, made out of wood, built in 1921. But then Ray and Margaret Houck moved up from, I told you about cars, didn't I? Ray and Margaret Houck moved up from Dover in 1951, bought the place, converted it into a cinema. For the first 4 years of its life, it was called the Badminton Cinema, and then they changed it to Raymar. and that's Ray and the Mar bit from Margaret. They could have called it Ray Margaret, I suppose, but they didn't. And yeah, this is the cinema from my childhood. It started pretty much just about there. It went along pretty much to the second house there. There was just a flat wall there with quad frames on it, poster frames on it. And then if we move down a bit...
Hold on, you've got a phone call.
I've got a phone call. No, I'm going to hang up on that. That's my brother. We'll keep recording. Kevin, don't interrupt don't interrupt my moment. If we can move down a little bit. So the front door, as I remember it, was just about there, pretty much where the wheelie bins are now. And you had one door, and you went through the door, and the distance from the front door to the cash desk is less than the space from here to that garage door. And yeah, that's where Margaret sat. That's where you bought your ticket and you bought your sweets, you know, be it, you know, your little, what were those little cardboard boxes? Was it Poppins? Yeah, Poppins, chocolate covered raisins or peanuts or crisps and your Kiora. And that was just there. And to the left was Ray standing at the door. And there was a red curtain. You went through the red curtain and you went into the auditorium. And it was one level. When they built this or converted it into a cinema, it was 240 seats. But in 19 something, they ripped out a lot of the rear seats and they became armchair seats, and it went down to 216 seats. And I remember, yeah, the cheap seats were at the front, and that's where the kids always went, and the posher seats were at the front, right? And as I say, it was just one level, and it was very, very basic, but it was great fun. I saw so many films here. I mean, the very first film I ever saw in the cinema was here in 1966, Batman. The feature-length version of the TV series was here in 66. I remember seeing Escape from the Planet of the Apes here, and that's the first time in the cinema I can ever remember being upset by a film, that they actually die at the end. This place, I'm standing in the very first place I ever lied about my age to get in to see a film, which was Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And I can remember going in that door there and cacking it because I thought I was going to be rumbled. I was only 12, but I lied. What else? I can remember coming to see King Kong here in 76 with my dad, and we sat in the back row and he fell asleep and he was snoring. And but I was so scared of my dad I couldn't actually tell him that he was snoring. That's another memory. I'd say I saw the Batman film here in 66. 10 years later, I saw that with my big sister. 10 years later, I was back with my big sister to see Jaws here. And my abiding memory of that was Christmas of 76. And we came out, it was an evening screening, and we came out just here, and it had snowed heavily. And my brother-in-law was up in the high street, and he couldn't get down here, and we had to like wade through snow. We had just watched this film, you know, set in summertime in America, and you come out in England at Christmas, and we had to wade through freezing snow. And my last memory of seeing films here, and this, you'd never get this today, you'd never get this in cinema today. I came here after Star Wars came out to see 2001, all right, because they re-released it after the success of Star Wars. And I can remember coming along to see it, and along here you had a whole line of children because the poster said before Star Wars there was 2001. So you had all these kids thinking it was going to be another Star Wars, and Ray Houck came out, and I always remember this, and he was going down the line to the kids here saying, look, you won't like it, you'll get bored, don't waste your money. Next week I've got, I don't know, some Disney film, come back then. You know, you wouldn't get that now. A manager would take your money. When you're bored, he'll just chuck you out, you know. And that was that. And it's really weird as well, you know, I've got a lot of history of coming to the cinema here, but when I started at the Maidstone Cinema, I got to know Ray Houck, because cinemas, not anymore, but back then when you had 35mm prints, you had to have something called a film dump, which was basically a cupboard on the outside of the building with a door which just led into a cupboard, and that was a storeroom where the film company would come along. They would have a key to the door, and that's where they would drop off your films and they would drop off your adverts. But Ray didn't have one of them in this cinema here, and he used to use our one at Maidstone, you know, like 6 miles away. So I got to know Ray quite well, and I used to come here in the 80s, and I used to go upstairs in the projection box with him, and we'd have a cup of coffee and talk about cinema and stuff like that. And that's pretty much that. I think it closed very early 90s, and as you see, it's been developed and demolished. The house at the very, very end is called the Raymar still, and that originally was given to Ray and Margaret. You know, it was part of the deal. They sold the property off for development, and they would get a free house out of it as well. And that was their house down there. But even back when this was their cinema, they had a flat adjacent to the cinema, so they were already living here. And I think that's about it. But it was a fabulous little cinema. As I say, 6 miles away we had Maidstone, which had 3 screens and much bigger screens and, you know, much more variety. But if you were local and you were a kid especially, you know, within walking distance, which really we weren't because we were like 2 miles away, you made the trek. A lot of people called it the flea pit. I think that's very disrespectful. Ray and Margaret, they looked after the cinema, and they poured all their savings and all their enthusiasm into it, and that's a bit disrespectful, but it was a lovely place. I just wish on the internet there was more, you know, a record of it. As you know, it's very, photos of the place are very rare, so I just thought I'd do this little film and just get the word of the Raymar out there.